Good afternoon. This is Umakant here. This is the toughest panel to have actually. One, the subject is deep tech. Second, it is after lunch. So yeah, maybe can you all raise your hands? So we still have some sleeping. Please raise your other hand. And can you clap them? Thank you. Sorry, this is like an MC trick, but I thought that it will get us all woken up because it's high time. I mean, deep tech is kind of very interesting thing to actually have because fundamentally, if I see right earlier, people in business used to change linearly, right? So you could look at the past and then you can predict the future. Technology was the one that was actually changing exponentially, right? And so you could actually get this S curve going, right? Now what's happening is that this technology is getting inside people and it is getting inside businesses, and with that both people and businesses are changing exponentially, and that's why technology has become really really important, and deep tech is even more exponential. So, and it is getting into deeper and deeper into businesses and multiple businesses. So as a result, both people and businesses are changing exponentially. So if we have to actually stay alive as a nation, stay competitive, our investment and scaling of deep tech companies actually should be of national concern. A very quick introduction, we thought that we will actually have about the topic. The topic is about deep tech scaling, but we thought we will expand the topic and we'll open it up because I think a lot of you are entrepreneurs, and you've actually gone through a cycle of some of these challenges yourself. So let's discuss a little bit more about challenges and also look at what are the problems which are related to you as a company, related to ecosystem, and also something which are fundamentally systemic, right? And we were discussing this backstage. I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a VC, and now we are trying to build the ecosystem. So I got through a bit of perspective on each side. But the big realization was that when I was an entrepreneur, I was looking at one company. Then as a VC, we're looking at multiple companies. Then as an ecosystem builder, I'm looking at across. And that perspective has been very, very enriching and learning, because then you realize that, hey, the problems exist at all levels. So what we thought here was that we will do a quick round of introductions so you understand a bit of background. And then we will get into what each of us actually faced as a top three problems, and then we will look at inviting suggestions, inviting ideas, because one more thing that we're doing is that we're trying to help Niti come up with a vision for 2035, especially in the area of frontier technologies. And a lot of these ideas, suggestions that you might actually come up with, we shamelessly plan to use in that. So please feel free to contribute. Very quick introduction of myself. I'm Umakant. Spent almost 18 years in technology space. First, of course, I worked for 8 years in Wipro. Then I came out, I started the first chatbot company out of India, 2009-10, when Siri was also not famous, and really understood what failure was like because we couldn't sell that technology. Ran out of pair of shoes. Then I went to Valley, I learned what's the difference in ecosystem that we've got and they have. And came back, I started Pi Ventures along with Manish, a good friend. Pi Ventures, this was the first AI-focused fund in India, still is. Raised $30 million for AI, and that was like unheard of. We invested in 10 companies. A couple of them are now reaching $100 million in valuation, one in probably 10 million in revenue. So there is hope on both the sides. But then I realized that fundamentally, one, we are not seeing enough deep tech companies in India. And the reason is a lot more systemic. And we have to work very closely with academia, industry, and government. So I took a back step at the fund and created something called as AI Foundry, where we're creating a research park, a venture studio, and also write policy interventions with the government to actually bring this sector alive. This was a long introduction, but I'll ask Joydeep to give his introduction as well.
Okay. Yeah, I have a mixed US-India background. I worked for a long time in the Bay Area for various companies, Network Appliance, Yahoo. Ended up at Facebook in 2007 and was one of the early sort of participants in the big data ecosystem. I wrote the Apache Hive project. And then my co-founder and I were both involved in that, and we coming out of Facebook, we said, let's build a company around this. So we started this company called Qubole in 2011. We are a big data as a service because of our roots in the big data, and we decided to move to the next generation architecture, provide it as a service in the cloud. Basically in execution mode for the last 8 years, scaling this company, it has come a long way, a lot of hard lessons, still a long journey to go. So, somewhere between 10 and 100 million run rate, yeah, need to grow fast.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Vivek?
Thanks, Uma. I am Vivekanand Pani, co-founder of Reverie Language Technologies. So I have been working on Indian language computing for like more than 2 decades. We started Reverie in the year 2009. It's like really, really long time ago. Right? Trying to work for India and solving the Indian language problems on the computing or the digital medium. And I think at that time that was one area which was totally, I would say, we would find very, very few believers. We actually did not find any. So
that's quite, I mean, that's not very different for a lot of founders out here.
Yeah, but we had a very strong belief that this is going to grow big, and if we are trying to solve this now, then it will have a very large usage. But because we didn't find any believers, so we did not find funding either. So that forced us to remain bootstrapped and focus on building revenue, and therefore we ended up creating some value as well through our IP. And today, the point where we are probably the only full stack Indian language tech company from India, right?
Wow.
There are some others as well, but they do exist because they have to. For example, Microsoft or Google, they have an operating system, and therefore they build fundamental technologies for many languages, and then they keep building advanced AI tools also for those geographies. And India is a very important geography. So we have tools like today, for example, speech to text or NLU, etc. So those are the things that we have been working on.
Fantastic. I mean, he is very modest, but their algorithms in quite a few cases perform 10 to 15% better than a lot more funded companies as well. I mean, a lot more means like really billions of dollar companies, right?
True. I would say that industrial solutions that may be available today in the open that can be evaluated in our own benchmarks, which we have tried and made as neutral as we could, we have seen that we are 15% better than the next best.
Fantastic. Hrishikesh? Yeah, I think it's on.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Hrishikesh, and I studied in an institute called Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and Department of Computer Science. I pursued doctoral studies there. So Ziroh Labs is a startup that works in the areas of encrypted computing. So by encrypted computing, what it means is that right now when you process data in a computer, the processing happens on top of plain text. So you have to, even if you encrypt data and store it in your hard disks, you have to decrypt it first and then it gets processed. So what we have done, we have designed a couple of algorithms, and a new set of inventions completely indigenous from India in the areas of fully homomorphic encryption. They allow you to work on top of encrypted data without requiring any kind of decryption. So we started the research in 2012. It took a long time, almost 4 years, to understand that We have an algorithm probably which is better than the state of the art during that point in time. So we started in 2016, and today is 2019. We are around 22-member team spread across a couple of geographies. R&D and engineering is done out of India, but sales getting done from Bay Area, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Australia. So this is all about us.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, homomorphic encryption is as cutting edge as you can get. There are probably only 3 places, as you pointed out, right? I think it's actually happening, and they're a rare startup actually. And coming out of India, it's kind of even more rarer, right? So, but we thought that we will actually, take up each one of them to basically talk about the big challenges that they've actually faced so far. And as you can rightly see, right, like you started in 2011, and today is 2019, and it took them 8 years to hit probably 10 to 50 million dollars in runway, right? I mean, 8 years is the typical timeline of a VC fund. Most of the time, most of the Indian VC funds are 8+1+1. That means 8 years. You actually have to return the money to the LPs, and you could extend it by a couple of more years, but that's actually is a tough process. I've been a VC, so I know that. Um, I mean, when you were incorporated,
So November 2009. So we'll be like 10 years in
yeah,
in a week or so.
So yeah, so almost 10 years, right? And you started in 2011. So you can see, right? So the fundamental issue that I can see very clearly is that the deep doesn't happen by magic, right? I mean, deep has to become deep, right? And deep is technology deep and the science deep. And it takes time to actually validate that, right? And, would love to share, ask their experience of how did they remain alive? Because, most of the VCs know that, it takes a lot of time. So, if you invest in a deep tech company, and if it takes 4 years for them to come out into the market, you probably have got another 2.5 years before you have to actually start, making plans for exit, right? So it's like you invest so much money, you basically have the tree coming out, and then as soon as it gets to raw mangoes, right, you have to sell, right? So raw mangoes sell at 5 rupees a kg, right? And the ripe mangoes sell at probably 100 rupees a kg and 200 rupees a kg. So you can see, right, the big challenge that we face as a ecosystem, because we have nowhere these guys can go, where they can actually get some kind of soft funding or grant funding, or maybe even some kind of institutional support where they can actually grow their science. So would love to ask about how did they achieve that?
How did that?
How did you actually still manage to get to this point? Because you're a rare breed,
Yeah.
right?
So I am been, I must say, I am lucky in the sense that.
So you have to be lucky.
Yeah. So I got a couple of people who believed in us, and they helped us sail through this difficult journey, but at the same time, it's the most enjoyable one as well. So when we started out 2012, then it was academics, and there's nothing much. We also did not thought that we will start a company on this. 2016 when we started and really started recruiting people, and then a lot of really good guys came and joined us in engineering as well as in research. So today we have around 7 to 8 PhDs who work day in and day out to optimize the algorithms, to invent entirely new things. So there are some people who helped us, came forward. They help us to sustain us, even though at the last week of every month, there may not be money to go to McDonald's, but it's a good journey.
Yeah.
So
I
far.
mean, here it might be A to B as well.
Yeah, it might be A to B as well.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
So it's hard, right?
Yeah, it's hard because two things are here. So what we have realized over and over again. So let me tell you what happened yesterday. So yesterday we were trying to solve a particular problem since the last 2 and 3 months. It's a very interesting problem statement on how do you process voice without decrypting it. So for example, Google has this thing called Google speech to text. So you put in an audio file and text comes back to you. So we were trying to see that can we do so without decrypting the audio. So audio is generated, audio is encrypted, and it is solved. Naturally, this kind of problems and the kind of solutions you only got to see in the research papers. So you have to go to IEEE SCM, download the paper, study it for certain duration, understand it, and then apply your own mind to solve it. So some of the PhDs who works with us, they were in this problem statement since the last 2-3 months. And yesterday we could see some really good results. Really good results in the state of the art results published in June 2019 papers in
Wow.
reputed conferences. So technically, I think we are in a position where we can tackle any of the world's complex problems. So I think in terms of market, the kind of awareness or the kind of legislation or the kind of support required to validate the products coming out of deep tech companies and to do the initial scale up point
Yeah.
so that you can move to Bay Area comfortably. I mean, in the sense that you have good referenceable customers over India. I think that is there the problem is.
Yeah, I think getting good early referenceable customer
Yeah.
is a tough chasm to cross,
Yeah.
but I think it's a very important.
Yeah.
So I would love to understand how did you, right? Like looked at it. I mean, the same problem space. What was the big challenge that you faced early on?
Multiple actually. So it may also depend on the challenge that you have picked up. I'm saying it purely from the experiences that I have had. We ended up picking a challenge that was not being really, envisioned by most people. So it was not just that. For example, today, if you were to work on uh, deep tech, people understand that deep tech also means machine learning, AI, etc.
Yeah,
And
that's the hot word right now.
yes, and machine learning AI today not only has access to better hardware, but also a lot of data. And when we started at that time, Indian language usage itself didn't exist, so data availability was zero,
Data was.
right? And I would say that the only institute that had actually done phenomenal amount of work in Indian language computing was probably the academic institutes in India funded through TDIL. And 100% of all the data was kept away from the industry. So practically you can say that India was put under severe disadvantage because the academics do not create things to sell, which would mean that they are not really very deeply involved in creating value that can be,
Commercialized.
yeah, commercialized.
Yeah.
And it becomes a responsibility for the industry, which has to do the research and also has to invest in all of this.
Yeah.
And we did not have money.
Yeah. All deadly combinations. They should have killed you, but like, how did you survive?
Yeah, so I I think most founders would agree that sometimes you do get lucky, and that's what we call grace. In our case, I and Arvind, my co-founder, we had just shut a startup that had failed because of global recession. The Reverie Technologies we started in 2007. In 2008, there was global recession. By 2009, we had burnt all the savings and everything that we had. And in November 2009, with nothing with us, we still wanted to start Reverie Language Technologies. We literally begged from whoever that we could. We created lists. जैसे मंदिर की लिस्ट बनाते हैं, इस मंदिर के सामने बैठेंगे तो.
No, that's pretty much the story of
I'm-
most of the deep tech founders.
Yeah, I'm just being honest. We literally made lists of friends, family, जिनसे पैसे मांग सकते हैं बेझिझक या झिझक के साथ में भी. And so that's what became our seed money. But we ran out of seed money also. We were in a lot of difficulty. But we were also at the same time constantly telling ourselves that unless we create value and keep focus such that we are able to make our creation sell. So that pressure made us create something that we could sell. In spite of that, I would say that our first customers were American customers who were targeting India as a market. So when that happened, then we got our first endorsements. So I would say that we still could not endorse ourselves in India.
Yeah, that's a tough mindset, but I think that mindset is shifting because we now, we saw with even with Pi portfolio companies, they were cracking Indian customers, and customers were ready to embrace something as new as AI because they saw an opportunity to leapfrog, which is interesting. I think there is a lot more awareness now, but I think, of course, we're still not there at the valley level. I mean, I'm sure, you would be finding it tough to sell in India, or forget about sell. I mean, there are hardly 10 people who know about homomorphic encryption in India. Forget about them being on the buying side. So I can see that challenge. How about you? How did you navigate the early years, which are difficult for deep tech companies? Most of them die.
Yeah, I think we also had our share of challenges. So uh, not as hard as these gentlemen.
How
but
did you get lucky?
Yeah. I think like both the folks here mentioned, so we were also a little early to our market. So we were trying to build everything in the cloud. And when we started, VCs would turn down people who were trying to make in the cloud. The first thing was they would say, oh, cloud is for developers to play in. Like it's not an
It's for
enterprise.
kids.
It's for kids, right?
Yeah.
And second thing they would say is that, look, even if you got big, AWS would kill you. So like, what's the point, right? And AWS had this long history of methodically killing off every person, every company that tried to build something competing. So like I think to some extent I share some level of persistence. I think that just goes without saying. I think we had good backers. I think just like the first gentleman mentioned, some of our VCs have been very supportive and have supported us throughout this journey, and it certainly has had some ups and downs. So I think that has really helped. But we did get customers early, so it is not that we did not have to take many years to get our first set of customers, because we were a little bit more baked coming out of the open source movement, had something that was already in use at a lot of companies. Yes, we did not have sufficient customers, but yes, we did have some people using the software, and we were able to use that to get our first set of customers. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think one clearly, actually two things I clearly see. One is that yes, I think early years are extremely tough. You have to find a very supportive environment. It's not there yet in India. We are pushing the government and academia and industry to create one. We are pushing them to create a research park and supporting infrastructure where they can actually spend 4 years without diluting themselves too much out, because research has shown that if founders get diluted out by more than 40%, that company will never become a big company. It will probably either get acquired or it will get shut down over a period of time. So that's a tough part. How do we create those companies? We talk about creating Google or Facebook or Amazon out of India. I mean, how do we actually create those kind of companies without actually having a supportive environment? The second big challenge that I do see is the finding those early believers, whether it is investors or it is customers, right? And customers you have to be super lucky to find, or you could actually, as you pointing out, they went open source and they got the whole world to listen to them, right? And I think same way with you, you're trying to actually create these sales channels across the globe so that you could talk to almost everyone and find out who are the early adopters. In fact, and I was doing chatbot company, when we actually realized that no, we could not sell chatbots in India in 2009-10, we actually made it a SaaS model, and the first customer came from Australia, and it was very surprising. But that was the interesting part, right? So you would have to probably fan out wherever your investors are or customers are. Of course, it's tough in your case because you're focused on Indian market, but then you found customers who are interested in Indian market, right? So I think you have to nail whichever customers you're selling to, where the center of gravity lies in, and you have to figure out who could be the easiest possible in value chain to get to those customers, right? So second thing I would like to ask, and I'll start with Joydeep, is that one thing is surviving those 4 years, getting to probably from prototype to product, right? But it's not just productizing the product. You have to productize sales, marketing, distribution, and that are tough challenges, right? So how did you actually look at that part? How did you productize your sales, marketing, and distribution? Because most of the companies that I know, they ended up finding success on their third set of sales guys. So you have to fire the first one, second one, and the third one might be the lucky one.
I think unfortunately I learned that lesson too late. I think that was part of the issue. That I remember there's a guy named Jason Lemkin, very famous guy. He runs that SaaStr conference. Many of you may have heard of him. So I finally, well into my journey at Qubole, I read a note from him saying that you should always hire 2 salespeople and plan on firing one of them. And guess what? We didn't, right?
I hope there are not many salespeople.
I'm sorry.
in the crowd.
It has nothing to do with the quality of the people. It's just more about the fit and the market and whatever works for you, right? And I think this actually is one of, we were discussing what are the takeaways or challenges. And certainly, I think I felt as a founder, speaking both for myself and my co-founder, we did not have sufficient background in sales and marketing. We hired people, but you still have to make sure they actually perform and pull it off. And if they're not performing, you got to find other people, and you got to adopt strategies where you have redundancy in the team and so on, right? And we did not know all this sufficiently. And unfortunately, startups have very little life. Like you said, right? 8 years is the time of the fund. After 8 years, investors start getting angsty. They want an exit.
6th year.
Okay, fine. So we don't have that much runway. So if you make a mistake, you hire a wrong person, you stick with that person for 1 year, then you say, okay, no, sorry, let me find another one. Well, might work very well in a 1,000-person organization with a deep moat and like lots of money. But if that's your only salesperson and you are in the 2nd or 3rd year of your existence, it's almost like a death blow.
Yep.
So these are things we did not know. And I think, these are some of the stumbles, we did hit some of those stumbles. And my overall takeaway looking back is that I wish somebody told us all this. Like, I wish I had read Jason's note, long before. And I think the world has actually changed in the last 8 years. I see these days that I go to Twitter, I go to, some of the social media channels. I see some very accomplished, venture capitalists, operators, entrepreneurs talking about their experience, what they did right. People like Jason, all the Anderson guys, some fantastic people. So I think the world has really changed also. It is a lot, like you said, right? Earlier trained data was not available, right? Labeled data, sorry. Similarly, I think for entrepreneurs, nowadays, we really need to open up our minds and ears to all this free advice that's pouring in and tune ourselves in, because I think, that is absolutely required to run a business successfully.
Yep. The firing of the sales guys, I definitely agree. I think it's both evolutions, right? One is, as a founder, you have an evolution that what is the right sales guy and what you should be actually looking for in a sales guy. Unfortunately, as he pointed out, you may not have much time, to find that fit. Either you need to find the right set of sales guys, or you need to be lucky with the customer, right? So the another big challenge that I see is like understanding distribution, right? I think a lot of deep tech startups don't fundamentally understand distribution or the power and the scale of distribution. So, did you look at that? Did you discover too late, or?
I think we came up with our first cloud platform in 2014, and at that time, SaaS itself was
very new.
Yeah, it was new
in India.
Yeah, in India. And we went through a lot of learning in the early days. Our platform was obviously very vulnerable, and I would say very patchy as well. And most of our learnings happened through customers. So I actually pity our customers, because they ended up not really being customers. They became our trials. And many times, therefore, we have had earned bad name ke अरे यार इनका तो कुछ चलता नहीं है. But so that was a tough cycle that we had to go, because there was not enough learning that was readily available either. So we had to do it to be able to learn that.
Yeah.
Distribution.
Yeah. So one more challenge that I see, and this is again coming back from, and one is like, of course, when I was an entrepreneur, I was looking at only my company, and I would always come back and say, okay, the problem is in me, right? Like, and most of the time we all feel that. But when we were looking at Pi, so I was looking at across the companies, and I realized, no, it's not just the founder. It's a lot more, fundamental issues of ecosystem, or key systemic issues as well. So that actually is kind of very interesting to realize, because then you realize that it's not that you should be pushing yourself, but you have to also push the other stakeholders as well, whether it is customer education or whether it is awareness. You need to create ecosystem, because product might be so new that you may not actually have an ecosystem around it, right? Like your case is kind of very interesting, because you are probably super early for most VCs,
Yeah.
right? You're also super early for customers as well, right? And forget about distribution. You're basically saying, okay, who's the guy that I should be selling to, right? So how do you find the right guy to sell in any organization, right? Because you have something which is probably like path breaking.
Yeah, so we tried multiple different models since 2018, first part of 2018. So what we have found out that so selling cryptography is also a little different than other products, because there is an element of trust, there is an element of validation, and many other things. There is an element of pedigree as well. They
Yeah.
they like to hear all these things. So now coming back, so what we initially focused on is to go and talk to technical guys and sell, but we realized that may not be, this may not be the right approach. So early 2019 we started talking to the business guys who handles the business problems, and they have day-to-day business problems. Incidentally and fortunately, privacy is something that you cannot escape today. So what we have seen so far is that if we talk to the right business guy and can motivate him enough to solve his particular problem using the tech that we have, then it becomes some sort of a little smooth journey while going to the technical people and then sell it from there. But starting it from the technical guys is little difficult.
Yeah. So finding that early
Yeah.
education with the customers, especially for deep tech product, actually that could be a big challenge, right? And because the other guy is also running either a company or he's part of a company, and what I realized very early on was that everybody's afraid of losing the jobs, right? Especially the guy in the enterprise, he knows that if he gets fired from this job, he may not find another one,
Yeah.
right? So he's extremely risk averse, right? So
Yeah, one thing that we also, just to is that we realize that uh, although the science is very interesting for us, very dear to us as well, because we spend a considerable amount of time doing that day and night, but then you should not go and sell science. We did that mistake in 2017-18, most part of 18 rather I would say. We'll start our presentations with more about the business. So I think that is more important for a deep tech startup, because sometimes we
figure out whether you need to be selling with CEO, CTO, or maybe the chief business officer, or maybe some other person in that organization. Who's the few early customers that could actually be interesting to look at, right? So how did you look at that? Puzzle in terms of when you said that which of the customers did you go to, their CEO, CTO, or
Actually, the initial days, I and Arvind, both of us were sales guys, and we both had zero sales background. But because we had a very deep understanding of our product which we were making, we also ended up making similar mistakes of not just trying to pitch technology, but we also ended up making certain mistakes in the early days of, let's say when we were pitching technology and we discovered that the customer really doesn't want the exact same thing that we have to offer, and they want something else, or they would want customizations or something like that. We have often gone ahead and made overcommitments, right? Because coming from sales and having understood a business problem is a lot better than actually trying to just stay with the technology, because there is a tendency of trying to overcommit and then not be able to meet that either. So those mistakes that we did a lot.
yeah. That could be challenging, because when you overcome it, you're basically selling a vision, right? And you may not have it in the product to show for, and it could actually create distrust that could actually end up losing the customer. You are in a different scale altogether, right? So you are actually now going between 10 to 50 million in annual run rate. And so what's the big key metric that you look at, in terms of your own company and where you want to go next?
So, I mean, obviously, revenue is one of them, but I think revenue is often a trailing indicator of uh, other factors. Things that worry me more are, I would argue, awareness and adoption. So I think if there is broad market awareness and um, user satisfaction and adoption at limited scale, you can always scale that business. The converse is not true. You can have a lot of revenue, but may not have the base to really scale it up to that level.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. One more key challenge that is, we've not talked about much, is the talent, right? Like, how do you attract and retain talent in a deep tech company, because the journey is going to be quite long, right? You're going to build it for 8, 10, 12 years, and God knows when you will actually get to some scale, or for it to be profitable for your employees to make money, or become, chase other milestone in their life, right? So how did you like end up looking at that part?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, we were talking about, the top 3 challenges or something like that. I think that talent, attracting great talent and retaining it, particularly, well, that's a problem everywhere, but I think India has its own unique challenges. Um, Unfortunately, all these problems are tied up, right? I mean, people, you've got all these sponsors, right? Rakuten, VMware, all, big pocketed guys, right? They can hire people for a lot of money. And at the end of the day, employees are motivated by deep tech, so you can get them in by, offering them hard problems. But at the end of the day, everybody has to worry about sending their child to school, buying a house, and so on and so forth, right? So that game only lasts so long. So it is really important to be financially successful, right? Whether it is revenues or market capitalization, to be able to offer, best talent will need cutting edge, salaries and so on. I think India has some unique challenges because while we do have a lot of, I would argue, fresh talent and like sort of up and coming talent, but I think I don't think we are anywhere close to Bay Area in terms of people who have been there for a significant amount of time that they can sort of build things on their own. Obviously, those folks are all starting companies, right? So yeah, but that doesn't help somebody who's trying to staff up. These are problems in Bay Area as well. But that said, I do believe still that Bay Area has way more depth in terms of talent. Yeah.
So the key things that I'm hearing is that when you are doing deep tech, I mean, the key metric that you want to actually eventually build the foundation of your company on is, of course, research, right? Like, you need to have a place to find where you can actually get good research done so that you remain cutting edge. Then I'm seeing data as a key problem as well. You need to find, if you're looking at AI as a space, you need to find early data sets, whether it's with customers or with hopefully with academic institutions. Soon we're trying to work with the government. Then of course selling is about understanding the domain and nailing the understanding of that. And talent, I think these are the 4 key pillars that are harder to nail, especially in a deep tech company versus the other companies which are more consumer focused. So I would like to actually open this up. If there are founders, investors, stakeholders, if you have there any questions that we should actually discuss that we missed, right? Or if we have probably discussed but probably not discussed in detail. So we can take probably like quick 5 questions. Can we have the mics, please? Yeah, the gentleman. Maybe you can just shout.
Would you want to elaborate a bit?
Maybe quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, I am Ravi. I am founder of a company called Heart Health. We are into AI-driven medical imaging diagnosis.
What specifically would you like to, is there a specific question?
Yeah, you mentioned about the talent part of it, and one unique problem that you mentioned, I couldn't get that actually. Fully.
So what I was trying to say on the unique side was that I believe the kind of talent you get in India is a little bit different from the kind of talent you get in more older markets like the Bay Area. Just the experience level that you can get. I would argue maybe the single characteristic that I look for, which I find hard to get, is independence. See, startups are actually companies like us. They're actually all about people. There's nothing other than people, right? If you take away the people,
Yeah.
the revenue stream is actually not worth that much. You get like a 2x or a 3x on the revenue stream, right? It's all about the people, right? So great people make the company, and the primary way they make the company is the greatest people are the people who can just create things, independently without too much supervision, work with stakeholders, create some new product or make significant enhancements, potentially even take it halfway to the market and so on. And that kind of skill set you can't just get in like somebody who's just out of college, no matter how smart they are. So I think that is what I miss. When I worked in much larger Bay Area firms, I think they have a lot of that kind of talent. A good set of individuals who can, take a concept and just, build it out, right?
So I think probably we need to work with the government to create some place where we can actually import a lot of that talent. Yeah, any other question? Yeah. Only in that row people are asking questions.
Hi, this is Sehaj, founder of AutoGenerate.ai. So my question is that only, like you said, the issues were there when you started. I feel the same issues are still there, like we are working on GANs and we have burned $5,000-6,000 by arranging credits and still not find the correct model. And in case even if we are able to train a good model, then investors say, oh, how will you sell it because the training set is not your own. So it's always that chicken egg problem. A lot of experimentation involves which needs money, and even if you do something, then investors come and say, it's not your own data. So how exactly to break that thing? Because I didn't see it getting any better. I mean, I have felt all the same problems that you just mentioned.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're not alone. This is the interesting realization. I mean, even at Pi, when we were seeing companies and we saw these companies, they went through, 2 accelerators, 1 incubator, and they were still not accelerated, right? And we realized that probably they don't have a place where they can actually access all of these 4 things: data, talent, domain, and research. We are trying to create that. I mean, AI Foundry is the place where we are trying to bring a lot of these things together so that we can actually get those kind of startups, because it's harder to, we don't have that kind of capital pool as it is there in Bay Area, right? They can actually fund a startup. The seed funding can be 100 million, and they can actually have these 4 things within one. So we probably need to create something horizontal which can be used by multiple startups or multiple founders who want to create a company. I think we have to look at creating these kind of motherships in some sense, right? So we have to do that. I think there's no shortcut, and unfortunately, I can completely empathize with your condition. I mean, you're not alone. I think there are probably like 100 founders that exactly stuck at the same spot, and we have to basically push to figure out like how we can create one. I think it's not your problem alone, right?
Yeah, I have a suggestion for him. What I have learned, don't go to an investor. It's a pure waste of time. Instead, find someone who believes in you. Investors ask all kind of questions. We've been asked many different kinds of questions in Bangalore, and then these are all silly questions. So we need not bother them. We just need to find the right guy who believes in you. So that's the point.
That's the other alternative. You need to.
Yeah, if I can just add one line, what Hrishikesh says is actually true. It is eye-opening, but it is true. When we made that list, trust me, every person who invested, they did not invest in the company. They didn't even know. what this company is about, what they are likely to do. They gave us money because they knew us. They said that, okay, Arvind is asking, I'm giving it to Arvind. So it's the person. So if an investor is able to identify the team well and then invests in the team, that is a lot worthy. And trust me, Reverie was bootstrapped for 6 years before we took Series A. If we had taken any investment, if we had got lucky and got any investment, I'm quite certain that by third year we would have closed our company.
So
Yeah, that's the other part, right? Like, we don't have an ecosystem which can actually, help you create the deep part of the deep tech, right? So we have to create one. I think we need all your suggestions. You have my email ID is Umakant at aifoundry.ai. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've floated a post. You can drop in a suggestion. We're trying to, push the government, push other stakeholders to create a space like that. So, your suggestions, ideas would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your, helpful time and
Thanks a lot.
insightful ideas. Thank you.